here for hour number 2. Chris Brown, Steve Tasker, One Bills Live. And joining us now, as he does every week, ESPN NFL analyst Dan Orlovsky, whose appearances on One Bills Live are presented by Caesars Sportsbook, an official mobile sports betting partner of the Buffalo Bills. All right, Dan, last Thursday night's a little bit further in the rearview mirror, but I did want to get your thoughts on this. After 3 games, Bills are number 1 in the league in rushing at 163 yards a game. They're first in the league in time of possession at almost 35 minutes. And the Dolphins were damn going to try to stop that run game. They tried it with 3 defensive tackles on the field in a 50 front. They tried it with 4 defensive tackles on the field at times, 2 edge rushers and 2 linebackers, a 4-4, which we don't see very often either. And it didn't mean a hill of beans. They did get a few stops. I mean, they had 2 tackles for loss, 2 tackles for no gain, and I think 3 tackles for a 1-yard gain. But at the end, there's James Cook with 132 yards rushing, a couple of rushing touchdowns, and they weren't able to be effective enough in slowing them down. What do you make of this Bills run game, and do you think other teams are going to try unique approaches to try to stop it?
Yeah, I think it's become one of the most creative run games in the NFL. And I would say that's the wrinkle this year. You know, as good as their run game was last year, it was there was like go-to runs. You know, there was like 2 of them. It was often, maybe duo or weak zone and then tackle pull, tackle trap.
Pull, right.
And they've really diversified their run game. Shout out to Aaron Cromer, their offensive line coach, and I'm sure run game coordinator, along with Joe Brady. They've got a lot more runs that they can go to. And so I think the thought was that you would expect teams defensively to have different ways to try to combat that run game. And so you're trying to stay ahead of it as an offense and going, okay, we need to be able to run this scheme or this week or this versus this front, or if they give us this personnel. And so having the ability, because it's also a slippery slope. You don't want to have too much that you're not good at anything. There's that 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other, when it comes to, are we doing too much? Are we trying to do too much? Because if we're trying to do too much, then we're not getting good at anything. But they've also kind of mastered we want to do a lot and be really good at it and be capable of doing a lot of it. And so I think that's something that really stood out. And I would imagine, there's teams that are better equipped to handle the run, in the NFL. Like the Chargers are very much so equipped to handle the run. The Texans are very much so equipped to handle the run. The Broncos, so there's teams that have the bodies that are more capable of it than, certainly the Dolphins this past weekend. But I think their diversity is the wrinkle this season.
We had former Bills center Mitch Morse on, and I asked him this question. I'll ask it to you too. So you got this quarterback and this offense in Buffalo. They don't take sacks. Josh has been the hardest guy to sack for 3 years. Like 3% of his dropbacks he gets sacked on. They don't turn the football over. They can run the ball really well. And the quarterback is also a part of that run game where he creates and does all that as well. They've got 35 minutes average time of possession this season. I mean, that is a tough out for any defense. That recipe, and they've hung 30 to 40 points on every opponent this year, so they're still scoring points as well. What do you do, and what's it going to take to get this offense off the rails? I mean, what's it going to look like when a team actually plays well against this kind of because even with a great pass rush, Josh is hard to sack because he runs away from it.
I don't think the pass rush is the thing for me, Steve. I'd say number 1, you're going to have to be a team that steals 1 or 2 against them, turnover-wise. You'll have to be a team that punches the ball out and recovers it, figures out a way to bat the ball down, because some of their short passing game, that's a completion-driven passing game, whether it's, some of the stuff that's somewhat downfield but lateral, because that is a part of their game. That's almost like their run game. The second version of their run game is that horizontal perimeter. So I think you'll have to get a hand on a ball or tip a ball and find a way to take the ball away. I think you're obviously going to have the people to win on early downs against their run game and get them into situations where they can't do whatever they want. They can't be in that comfortable state. And then you're going to have to play really good coverage wise. Like the perfect example would be what the Lions did last night to the Ravens. It was, and even though they scored 30, you watch that tape and you go, man, that defensive performance was fantastic. They, for the most part, gap wise, shut down their early run game. And then it wasn't as much of rushing Lamar. It was playing really good coverage, sticky coverage, and funneling Lamar to certain people. Different animal, I get it, but similar skill sets with Josh is, you want to play man coverage on this football team if you can, and you're going to have to deal with motions and formations and picks and shifts. So you got to have coverage people, and then you got to have a really good second level or rush guy that is capable of mirroring and shadowing and spying him. It's not there's not a lot of defenses that are capable of it, but that's the way to go about doing it.
Yeah, that's a really long list.
It's a long list of gotta haves. Yeah.
I wanted to draw your attention because you mentioned this last week how Josh has entered the elite status of pre-snap recognition and getting his team in the best possible play. The last two plays of the drive that results in the Hawes touchdown on the shovel pass. The play before that, Josh sees run blitz coming, checks to the Coleman slant, and gets it. Coleman makes a nice catch in a tight window with good coverage, and gets the first down. And then Josh creates off script, out in the open field and shovels it to Hawes for the touchdown. I don't know if you noticed this, but after that play to Coleman, James Cook actually daps up Josh and says, "Thanks for checking to the slant," because that corner was screaming and would have flattened him if they had the handoff. So just maybe walk us through that check and the decision Josh makes there to go to Coleman on the slant.
Yeah, so there's a couple things attached to it. Absolutely saw it, and that's so cool. One, shows how smart the whole offense is, and how informed the whole group is. That James knows the why behind it. So it starts with really third year in the offense. I know it's the second full year in the offense, but really third year under Joe Brady. So the comfort level and the football 501 level that they're at, so, and the continuity of their whole coaching staff. It feels like a lot of that staff offensively has been together for a while now. So that's starting point. The second thing is when you have runs called, I always say this, you get a play call as a quarterback. Every play call, there's an opportunity for you. Your coaches are calling plays for the ideal defense, both in front and coverage. So there's an opportunity for every play to be the perfect defense for you, and that's why you're calling the play. And then there's problems in every play. There's sometimes in protection, there's sometimes in coverage. We got a concept called, and it's a bad versus that coverage. And then there's problems in your run game, because football is always going to be math. And a lot of times that run game, and that example is like to open side stuff, meaning there's no tight end or reduced receiver to protect against an open side defender. And so there's answers to that problem that is kind of presented to the quarterback. You can send the offensive line that way. Sometimes we all see quarterbacks point at the line of scrimmage like, no, I want you to go to that guy, the Mike. You can send your offensive line that way. But then that changes angles of your blocking scheme. Who else is over to that side? You might be changing things for offensive line and making blocks impossible. Or you can replace that defender with a certain type of throw or receiver. Sometimes it's flat, sometimes it's slant, sometimes it's nows. And so it's the space that you think and or know is going to be vacated. Can you take advantage of that? And so those are just when people hear quarterbacks and offensive coordinators say, well, we had the right answers. I mean, that's the perfect example of that. But I think it's very cool that the running back knows why the quarterback did it. And that means everybody's very much so connected.
And I know this too. New Orleans is struggling. I mean, They're coming into Buffalo, tough place to play. These are two teams that do not play each other very often. When you look at New Orleans, you don't really see Spencer Rattler. What you're really looking at is Alvin Kamara, Cam Hayward.
Yeah.
Cam Jordan.
Cam Jordan, not Cam Hayward. Cam Jordan. So what are your thoughts about this matchup where certainly Buffalo's a better football team at the current moment? How do you go into a game like this if you're Buffalo, and where's your first avenue of attack?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, we're going to highlight Buffalo a lot today on NFL Live. We're actually getting into them, but the broader picture of how much the tight ends are impacting the way that they're playing football. They're leading the charge, and I think it's a whole trend that we're going to see throughout the NFL. So, one of the things is their multiple tight end package will be once again at the forefront. Seattle was great against it with New Orleans because New Orleans wants to play in nickel, and that's going to be a huge advantage for Buffalo. So their multiple tight end stuff. I think one of the things that really stood out was Seattle did a really nice job of getting Sam Darnold outside of the pocket, and that freed up a lot of throwing lanes. So I would expect to see a little bit of that with Josh. Very aggressive secondary. They're going to give you opportunities to have shots down the field. They want to jump things just as a group. And I think that'll be something, when strategically you can build things off of maybe some tendencies that you have. Seattle had success with that. So I think that's offensively the things that you can get a hold of. Your 12 personnel run game and or 13 personnel run game is going to be very successful unless they play it, much better, but they've struggled with that all year. And then I think defensively, the Rattlers actually had good moments. Like I know they got boat raced this past weekend. Rattler threw it well. He got through progressions well. I think he's way locked into Chris Olave right now. Like it's Olave. They're trying to force feed the football to Olave, and they're moving him around like he's become the guy that they want to get 10 to 12 targets to. And so if you can handle Olave, huge success. Obviously, Alvin's a big part of it. I don't think they're running the football very well with Kamara, but they're trying to throw it to him out in the pass game. But if you handle Olave, you're going to have a lot of success. But I will say, Rattler can throw it. He's been impressive throwing the football.
And then what do you make? I mean, you talked about them being a high-risk defense, willing to jump routes and stuff. Is that pretty much out of necessity? Because they've been – I mean, the first two games were one-score games. Did they climb back in at the end? I haven't watched them all yet. Or were they largely decided and, they score some garbage points at the end to make it look good on paper?
No, I would tell you, I don't, the first two games, I don't think the people that they were playing against played great. I think Arizona, Marv had a couple drops that, hurt their offensive production. So they haven't been very explosive offensively. They just have not. And I think defensively, they got impatient against Seattle. But I also think it was a little bit of Seattle anticipating some of that and building things off of some of their own self-scouting and tendencies. So, their offensive line is struggling pass protection. You can get home after Rattler. They have not been an explosive offense. And I just think defensively, they realize they're going to have to force some takeaways to try to give them some opportunities. And so the Bills should absolutely take advantage of that.
All right, so tell us about Spencer Rattler. I mean, you know quarterback play as well as anybody we speak to. And obviously he doesn't have everything around him that he's going to need to really be successful. But what kind of player is he? Is there hope for him? I mean, he has yet to get a win as a starter.
Yeah, I've been impressed with him. I have. Again, I don't think this is a great situation. Offensive line is below average. Olave's really the guy now. Rashid Shaheed's a big speed guy down the field. So there's a consciousness to this. I would say this, Steve. One, there's not a throw that he does not think he's capable of making. He is a very talented. We just took him out on the field and watched him throw. You'd say he's as talented throwing the football as anybody. So he's very aggressive with the football. I don't want to say like a recklessness, but if he feels like he can fit a ball into a window, if you give him a one-on-one situation to the perimeter, he's going to take it. And he can throw it now. Like he's very confident throwing the football. He plays in very good rhythm. I'll give him that. Like, he plays in rhythm in the structure of their offense. And when he's in rhythm, if you let him have clean feet and clean vision, he can light you up. He can throw it. I would tell you, one, can you get him to think? Because that gets him a little bit out of that rhythm. Can you get him to move? I think then he becomes more reckless with the football outside of the pocket. He becomes a little bit more gunslingy. He becomes a little bit more playmaky. And so getting him to move or kind of see a little bit of doubt or confusion. But if you let him see it clearly, he can rip you up.
Yeah. Last one real quick, Dan. I just want to get your thoughts on Buffalo's pass rush, which last week did not get home. And
Yeah.
I think most people are under the impression, that Tua gets it out fast. But in that game, he really didn't. I think average delivery of football was 2.9 for the game, which is a lot for him. He's rarely at 3 seconds. What was missing, do you believe, from that compromised the effectiveness of Buffalo's pass rush, if anything?
Yeah, obviously the context of Ed not being there is a part of that, not only because the player, but the attention. So Ed not being there, I do think it factored in. Milano not being there, I do believe factored in, because Milano's a guy that sometimes is a pressure guy, sometimes they're fire zone guy, sometimes he's an occupy guy. So, I want to, speak in the context of the awareness of those guys not being there. No one's winning right now one-on-one outside for Ed. Really, that would be concerning. I'd also think as a whole, they tackled very poorly last weekend, which if you're going to play their style of defense, you can't have, And so I think pass rush has got to be something where someone's going to have to start winning more often than not. And I think they got to tackle a lot better than they have in the first 3 weeks.
Good stuff.
All right, Dan, thanks as always for the time. We appreciate it. We'll catch up with you next week.
Thanks, guys. Have a great afternoon.